They are not going to announce it. They are not going to hold a press conference. There will be no warning label on the evening news. One morning, you are going to wake up, reach into your wallet, pull out a $50 bill, and the person across the counter is going to look at you like you just handed them a relic from the Middle Ages. And by that point, it will already be too late. Right now, at this very moment, 23 countries across the world have either fully banned large cash transactions, introduced legal limits on how much physical money you can spend at one time, or are in the final stages of rolling out digital currency systems designed to replace paper money entirely. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not something a blogger wrote in a basement. These are laws. These are regulations. These are government documents. And the mainstream media is not talking about it, because the people who own the mainstream media are the same people who benefit when your cash becomes worthless. Today, I am going to show you exactly what is happening, why it is happening faster than anyone expected, and most importantly, why physical gold and silver are the only financial instruments on this planet that have survived every single cash ban, every single currency collapse, and every single government reset in the last 5,000 years. Pay very close attention to the next few minutes, because what I am about to show you is not theoretical. It is already law in the European Union. It is already happening in India. It is already being tested in China. And if you think it cannot happen in the United States of America, I want you to keep watching, because I am going to show you the exact government documents that prove it is already being planned. Let us start with something most people have already forgotten about. Because the media made sure you forgot. November 8th, 2016. Not the election. What happened in India on that same night? Prime Minister Narendra Modi appeared on national television and announced with less than 4 hours of notice that every 500 rupee note and every 1,000 rupee note in the entire country was now illegal, worthless, dead. Citizens had exactly 50 days to surrender their cash to a bank and prove where it came from, or lose it forever. Think about what that actually meant for real people. Farmers who kept their savings in cash under the floor because they did not have bank accounts. Small business owners whose entire operating capital was in physical bills. Elderly people who had saved for decades in the only form of money they trusted. Overnight, with no warning, their wealth was criminalized. The government called it demonetization. They said it was to fight corruption and stop black market money. But 86% of all cash in circulation was eliminated in a single night. The lines at banks stretched for miles. People died waiting in those lines. Hundreds of billions of dollars in personal savings evaporated because people could not prove where the money came from. The government did not return it. The government absorbed it. And 3 weeks later, the mainstream financial press declared it a success. Now let us talk about Europe. Because what is happening there right now is even more alarming, because it is slower, it is quieter, and it is being dressed up in language that sounds completely reasonable until you understand what it actually means. In 2024, the European Union passed the anti-money laundering regulation, which set a hard limit of 10,000 euros on all cash transactions across every member state. 10,000 euros. That sounds like a lot of money. But here is what that regulation actually does. It means that if you want to buy a used car for 12,000 euros, you cannot use cash. If you want to pay a contractor to renovate your kitchen and the bill comes to 11,000 euros, cash is illegal. If you want to purchase anything of significant value without going through a bank that can report your transaction to the government, you cannot do it legally. And 10,000 is just where they started. Several member nations already have limits far lower. France has a limit of 1,000 euros for transactions between residents. Spain has a limit of 1,000 euros. Italy enforced a 1,000 euro limit for years before slightly relaxing it. Greece dropped their limit to 500 euros during their financial crisis and never fully lifted it back up. The pattern is always the same. They start with a number that sounds reasonable, and then they lower it, and then they lower it again, and every time they lower it. See, the justification is the same: fighting crime, fighting tax evasion, fighting terrorism. The language changes slightly, but the direction never does. The direction is always toward zero. Now I want to talk about China, because China is the preview. China is the laboratory. What China does today with money, the rest of the world will do in 10 years. The digital yuan, officially called the ECNY, is already in use in over 20 major Chinese cities. Employers are paying wages in digital yuan. Government benefits are distributed in digital yuan. And here is the part nobody in the Western press will say clearly. The digital yuan has a built-in expiration date. The government can program individual units of currency to expire if not spent within a certain period. The government can restrict what categories of goods the money can be used to purchase. The government can see every single transaction in real time, permanently recorded, permanently traceable. This is not money. This is a surveillance system that looks like money. And before you tell yourself that cannot happen in the United States of America, I need you to look at something. The Federal Reserve has been running a project called FedNow since 2023. The Biden administration published an executive order in 2022 directing federal agencies to research and develop a United States central bank digital currency. The Bank for International Settlements, which is the central bank of all central banks, published a paper in 2023 explicitly recommending that all member nations develop programmable digital currencies with built-in spending controls. These are not fringe documents. These are the official policy papers of the most powerful financial institutions on Earth. They are not hiding what they want to do. They are telling you. Most people just are not reading it. So why is this happening now? Why is every government in the world moving in the same direction at the same time? The answer is simple, and it has nothing to do with crime or terrorism or tax evasion. Those are the justifications they give you. The real reason is debt. The United States national debt has crossed $36 trillion. The European Central Bank is carrying over 5 trillion euros in assets on its balance sheet from years of money printing. Japan's debt to gross domestic product ratio is over 250%. Every major government in the developed world has made promises it mathematically cannot keep. Pension systems, healthcare systems, social security systems. The math does not work. And when the math does not work, governments historically do one of three things. They default and everything collapses. They inflate and destroy the purchasing power of savings. Or they control, which means they take away your ability to exit the system before they inflate. A digital currency is a control mechanism. Now, when you hold physical cash, you can choose not to put it in a bank. You can choose to save it outside the system. You can transact privately. When all money is digital, you have no choice. Every dollar exists only because a server somewhere says it exists, and that server is owned by people who can change the rules at any time. Now let us talk about what actually works. Not in theory, not in academic papers, in actual historical reality, tested over and over again across thousands of years of human civilization. In 1933, the United States government made it illegal for American citizens to own gold. President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, which required every person in the country to turn in their gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve at a fixed price of $20.67 per ounce. Anyone who refused faced a fine of $10,000 or up to 10 years in prison. The following year, the government revalued gold to $35 per ounce. Overnight, every American who had obeyed the law had lost 40% of their stored wealth. Every American who had managed to keep their gold, whether by storing it abroad or simply refusing to comply, had preserved their purchasing power. The lesson is not to break the law. Yeah, the lesson is to understand what the law is designed to do. It is designed to transfer wealth from people who save in physical assets to governments that need to devalue their currency. In Weimar Germany in the early 1920s, the inflation was so severe that people carried money in wheelbarrows to buy a single loaf of bread. Paper currency became literally worthless faster than the government could print it. But during the entire Weimar hyperinflation, the value of gold and silver in real terms never collapsed. A person who had converted their savings into physical metals before the crisis maintained their purchasing power. A person who had kept their savings in German marks lost everything. In Zimbabwe in 2008, inflation reached an annual rate economists estimated at 230 million%. The government printed $100 trillion bills that could not buy a bus ticket. And yet, throughout the entire collapse, someone who owned an ounce of silver could still trade it for real goods at a real value. The metal did not go worthless, only the paper did. This pattern has repeated in every single currency crisis in recorded history. Every one, without exception. Now I want to specifically address the gold-to-silver ratio, because this is the number that most people completely ignore, and it is the most important number for understanding where we are right now. The gold-to-silver ratio tells you how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. Historically, over thousands of years, that ratio averaged approximately 15:1. That is because the geological abundance of silver in the Earth's crust relative to gold is roughly 15:1. The Roman Empire priced them at approximately 12:1. The framers of the United States Constitution specified a ratio of 15:1 when they established bimetallic currency in 1792. For most of the 20th century, that ratio was artificially stretched by the paper derivatives market. At various points, it reached 80:1, 90:1, even over 100:1 during the pandemic crash of 2020. That meant silver was massively undervalued relative to its historical relationship with gold. We are now in a period where that ratio is compressing. It has moved from over 100 back into the mid-50s to low 60s range. And if it returns to even its 20th century average of 40 to 1, let alone its historical average of 15 to 1, the price appreciation in silver would be extraordinary. But here is the critical point that most people do not understand about silver specifically. Silver is not just money. Silver is an industrial commodity that is being consumed and destroyed in quantities that have never been seen before in human history. Every solar panel contains silver. Every electric vehicle contains silver in its electrical contacts and battery management systems. Every smartphone contains silver. Every advanced semiconductor requires silver in its manufacturing process. The global solar installation program alone is projected to require over 3 billion ounces of silver over the next decade. Annual global silver mining production is approximately 800 to 900 million ounces per year. The math on this is not complicated. La industrial demand alone is threatening to exceed total global production capacity before you add any monetary demand from people seeking to protect their savings from the cash ban and the currency debasement that is coming. The deficit is already here. It is already documented. The Silver Institute publishes the data every year. For multiple consecutive years, global silver demand has exceeded supply. The only reason prices have not yet fully reflected this reality is that the paper derivatives market, the futures contracts and exchange-traded products traded primarily in New York and London, allows enormous quantities of synthetic silver to be sold without any physical metal changing hands. This is the same mechanism that suppressed silver prices through the 1980s and 90s and 2000s. But the physical market, the real market where actual metal changes hands, it is already showing the cracks. Premiums on physical coins and bars have exploded. Delivery times at mints have extended to weeks. The paper price and the physical price are beginning to diverge in ways that historically signal a very significant move is coming. And now we bring it all together. Because the cash ban, the currency debasement, the silver supply deficit, and the gold-to-silver ratio compression are not 4 separate stories. They are one story. And governments are banning cash because they need to trap savings inside a system they can control and devalue. The devaluation is necessary because the debt is unpayable in real terms. The devaluation is going to be severe because the debt is catastrophically large. When people realize what is happening, they are going to try to exit into hard assets. But the window for doing that is not infinite. It is controlled by the same people who are running the cash ban. At some point, your access to physical precious metals may be restricted, taxed, or in the extreme case, regulated the way gold was regulated in 1933. The people who act before the window closes preserve their wealth. The people who wait until the news tells them to act find that the door is already shut. I want to be very clear about what I am saying here. I am not telling you to do anything illegal. I am not telling you to hide assets from the government. I am telling you to study history. I am telling you to look at what every major central bank in the world is doing with its own reserves. China has been buying gold every month for years. Russia converted its dollar reserves into gold before the sanctions hit and watched its financial system survive what was supposed to be a devastating economic attack. Poland, Singapore, India, Turkey. The central banks that have been buying gold are the same central banks that are building alternatives to the dollar-based financial system. Nah, they know something. They are acting on it. The question is whether ordinary people, working people, people who saved their entire lives in good faith inside a system they trusted, are going to understand what is happening in time to do something about it. Physical gold and physical silver are the only financial instruments that exist outside the banking system. They require no counterparty. They require no server. They require no government permission to hold. They have maintained purchasing power across every civilization, every currency, every government collapse in 5,000 years of recorded economic history. They are not investments in the traditional sense. They are the exit door from a system that is being deliberately closed. The cash ban is not coming. It is already here. The only question is how much of your financial life you choose to protect before the door closes completely.